I'm getting sued alongside Shannon, Sharpe, and an auditor from Mississippi by Brett Favre.
Wow. Man.
Brett Favre suing me in a defamation lawsuit saying I defamed his name to try to earn a profit.
Today's episode is going to be great. We're going to talk about Brett Favre's lawsuits against Shannon, Sharpe, and Pat McAfee. And of course, as always, it's going to be very entertaining. You're going to hear about these sports and history and some fun stuff. And the side note, you'll learn a lot about the law. Welcome back, my good friends. I'm so excited. I had a flood of comments and calls over the week, and I promise I'll get to everyone. I got to most people, and I love hearing from everybody. As always, people are asking me about the Michael Irvin lawsuit and, various questions about that. It's been great. And the Kobe Bryant and Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit against LA. Keep the comments coming. I will keep answering them. So today, it's interesting. We're going to talk about Brett Favre, one heck of a great quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback. And I, grown up and I watched Brett Favre, a lot. And he's one heck of a, he scorched the Raiders basically every time he played. I'm a big Raiders fan. And he just scorched the Raiders, and I love him, and he's a great player. He was born in 1969. He went to Southern Mississippi. Anyone know the mascot for Southern Mississippi University? It's the Golden Eagles, all right? And after that, he went to the NFL. He started with the Atlanta Falcons before he ended up with the Packers. And you've probably, in the news lately, okay, he's been involved, in this crazy scandal. So in his home state of Mississippi, what happened kind of goes like this. So the state allocated millions and millions of dollars that was in a fund that was supposed to be like a welfare fund. And then they allocated it in some ways to different causes. And at one point, and this is common with a lot of government entities, they actually they'll subcontract work, or they'll give other companies money to do certain things. And then one of the entities that got money from the state, okay, it's this nonprofit, which I have a joke. The most profitable companies are usually nonprofits, okay? So this one is called the Mississippi Community Education Center. So they wanted to kind of promote, building certain things or, promote some causes, right? And they agreed to pay Brett Favre $1.1 million to make certain appearances and talk on their behalf. And because it became kind of important later, when he agreed to it, he said, wait, I'll agree to it, but I don't want people, it publicized where exactly I'm getting the money from. I'll do the appearance, but I don't want it public that I'm getting paid to do the appearance, which most celebrities do ask that, and so I don't want it known that where it's coming from or why it's coming. I'll just do the appearance and you'll pay me for it and all good in the hood, right? Okay. And so he agreed to do that, and then he ultimately did do that. Then what happened was, even though it was alleged that he didn't even show up or something, he did everything. Like when they would ask him to do something, he would do it, then what happened was that, the state audited itself, right? Like one of the auditors audited, where all the money was being spent and all that. And it was pretty clear that a lot of this was being wasted, right? And then when it came out that it wasn't the state of Mississippi that gave Brett Favre money, it was the state of Mississippi gave a nonprofit company money, and that company paid Brett Favre for certain appearances, all right? And so then it came out in the media that, Brett Favre, took money from welfare, diverted money from welfare and all of that, which was not the case. He wasn't actively involved, and he wasn't doing things to take money from people. And as soon as things came out that this was, originally money that was welfare money, and it went through this hand, that hand, blah, 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 he agreed to, and he did pay back the money. Okay. So, Brett Favre, I would say when all of this is said and done, came out, kind of doing the right thing. All right. Except that, there was a big fallout, and he got sued by the state of Mississippi. Even though he returned their money and he did what he was supposed to do with that entity. And then worse, at least worse for him, is there was a lot of smack talk, all right, from the media. Okay. And so, and this is where the two lawsuits that we're going to talk about, Pat McAfee, here's what he had to say.
The two companies that Brett Favre was a part of rounded up some money, I believe, from the welfare fund of Mississippi.
They're bad-mouthing our guy, Brett Favre here, and they're saying a lot of things about him that Brett Favre can prove, according to his current lawyer, that is, false. It's a lie, okay, that he didn't do all those things. And same with Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe on his show said the following.
He stole money from people that really needed that money.
Yep.
You got to be really low to take from the poorest of the poor.
Now, there's something interesting we should keep in mind. Okay, so Brett Favre over the years has been, getting a little more political, so to speak. Like he would endorse certain candidates and things like that. And he was a big supporter of Donald Trump, okay, during the campaigns and all that. And the reason why I bring it up is in his defense and in his lawsuits, Brett Favre ended up hiring one of the attorneys that represented Donald Trump in the impeachment. Okay, remember those impeachment? Eric Hirschman. So Eric Hirschman, who was Donald Trump's attorney, then became Brett Favre's attorney. Okay, so anyway, just a little interesting, like a little connection there. And in the lawsuit, and in addition to the allegations that Pat McAfee was saying certain things, like he was also retweeting when other people would kind of make fun of Brett Favre and talk smack about Brett Favre. And there was one athlete that was like making a dance that made fun of Brett Favre, like pretending to take money out of Salvation Army pot or something after a touchdown. So I've always wondered what's the rule? Is retweeting automatically considered agreeing to something? Right? There was this very good short movie I saw. It's called Have I Shared Too Much? And it had this awesome quote. If you can't beat it, retweet it. Okay. And the theory here is that a lot of people think when you retweet something, you're kind of agreeing to it, which I do not. I do not agree that is what a retweet means. But anyway, so it was in the lawsuit that Pat McAfee was retweeting these things. And then Shannon Sharpe saying that this guy is talking, he stole money from the welfare. He stole money from the poor. He's rich and he's taking money from the poor and all that jazz. Okay. And then comes the lawsuit. Now, what do we always talk about first with these lawsuits? Jurisdiction. All right. Here is what happens. The lawsuit proceeded. Brett Favre sued these two individuals in Lamar County, Mississippi. All right. This county is actually, it has something like in the 2010 census, it had like 55,000 people. All right. And it's a whole county, and it's a pretty big, like size wise, it's a pretty big county. And 55,000 people. I think in Los Angeles, there's a lot of streets that have more than 55,000 people. All right. So it's a very small, in the sense of population, it's a small county, right? And he sued them in the state court in that county. Now, in terms of like, why would Brett Favre do that? It's clear, right? He's got the home field advantage. They love him there, and he's done a lot. Like he's, if after like Hurricane Katrina, he would help things, and he's been involved in a lot of kind of, giving back and doing certain things. So they love him there, right? You know who they don't love? Pat McAfee. You know who they don't love? Shannon Sharpe, right? Especially when they're talking smack about Brett Favre. These are guys that, didn't grow up there, didn't live there. They played, Shannon Sharpe played on like Baltimore and McAfee played for the Colts, so this isn't like Mississippi's, fellas, right? So that is why Brett Favre wants to have the lawsuit there. Okay, so now comes Joe Samo to review the jurisdiction. I think they did it wrong. All right, and here's why. Because first, you need to sue them. You have to have personal jurisdiction. Okay, remember the two things: you have to have personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction. Both. Okay, they don't. Okay, McAfee does not live in Mississippi. Okay, he does not have property there. He doesn't have like a job there. The fact that he like publishes on YouTube and people in Mississippi can listen to him is not enough. Even if he has some ads that kind of run all across the country, including Mississippi, that is normally not enough. Now it's not a technicality. This is an important constitutional issue. Okay, because in the Constitution, right, and the way it's been interpreted by the United States Supreme Court is that we don't want a state, all right, to have like a kind of reach and authority over a resident of a different state, because then like it would give Mississippi, for example, too much power, right? So that is why even if Mississippi allows it, they call this a long arm statute. Long arm statute means whoever we could sue, we'll let our citizens sue them, right? Even if that's the case, the federal Constitution has a limit to it. So Pat McAfee and Shannon Sharpe can challenge the jurisdiction that this court does not have jurisdiction. I think they would win that. All right. And then the funny part is the best way to challenge that. Okay, get this. You guys ready? The best way to challenge that is to first remove it from the state court to the federal court. Okay, because normally the federal court will be seated in a different like county and in kind of like a more populated county, right? And maybe they're not as hometown favorite. So, and they're allowed to move it to the federal court because they can move it to the federal court because you have citizens of different states, okay? And the lawsuit is over $75,000. And that there's like, they could agree to personal jurisdiction just to challenge the personal jurisdiction. You know what I'm saying? And then, ultimately, I think they will win that. I can't imagine that they would lose it. So, and I always wonder why the heck would these lawyers file the lawsuit in the wrong court? And all that I could come up with is that they're a-holes. I don't know what else to come up with, right? Okay, if I had to come up with something other than them being a-holes, why would they file the lawsuit in the wrong state? Maybe there's always a chance. Remember in that movie Dumb and Dumber, you say there's a chance that the court will disagree and say that there's jurisdiction there. Okay, and then maybe the defendants will overlook it, I guess, and just say screw it, I'll defend this case down there, right? I don't know. I guess there's since there's no harm other than wasting a lot of money and time, then whatever. Okay, so I think that this could be challenged, and I think that our friends would win. Now, I have to say something extremely important about Lamar County. There's a court there, okay? And to my surprise, I go to the court's website, get this, because I wanted to find the actual documents that were filed in the lawsuit. And it's a fairly new lawsuit, that's why there's not that many documents. I like it when there's way more. Anyway, so I go there and I couldn't get the documents. I couldn't navigate through it. So then whatever, there's a clerk and then there's an email address for the clerk. And I said, you know what, let me just email the clerk of the court and ask for all these documents. And then within just a couple minutes, she emails me back. I got all of this via email. I could not believe that. That's that in San Diego court or like a Los Angeles court or San Francisco. That would not. I think if I emailed the San Diego clerk, I think I'd be disbarred. So anyway, thank you, Lamar County. That was super, super nice. And I would really, really appreciate it. Without these documents, I don't know if I would have had to do something else, Okay, so jurisdiction, I think these guys end up winning. Now we get to the substance, okay? Like, let's now talk about the actual freaking lawsuit, all right? What we have here goes like this. Let's talk about McAfee, okay? All right. So in this lawsuit, they the Brett Favre attorney, he makes a point to say, McAfee falsely accused Favre of serious crimes, stating every time he gets his name brought up, we have to mention that he tied the hands of the poor people and took money right out of their pockets. Favre certainly in the middle of stealing from the poor people in Mississippi. McAfee published yet another statement defaming Favre on Twitter in his tweet, which included a video of NFL, the guy celebrating. He said something like Devonta Smith doing the Favre dance, the dance like showing that Favre is some sort of, thief and criminal, right? And then he liked certain tweets that said things like that. Is liking something meaning that you like it or just you want to draw attention to it? I don't know. No, okay. All right, counsel. All right, so then McAfee did something that I don't normally see people do. He goes on air and he starts laughing about this lawsuit, right? And he talks about how much nonsense it is and this and that. And he was very, very conceited about it. Like, this is BS and I'm going to win this and I don't even need a lawyer. That's the last thing I want to hear. No, just kidding. Right. So, he's making these comments. Then he said something. He said, in this whole complaint, they failed to state that every time I was talking about this, I always kept saying that these are all allegations. So I went back and I watched and listened to a lot of his previous, I don't know what you call it, podcasts, videos, shows, whatever you want to call it, right? His, previous episodes, right? And going back to November of last year, sure enough, he would say,
this is all allegedly, but it is alleged. It is alleged. What I think is being alleged blatantly and deliberately, allegedly, obviously, in this whole thing.
So there you go. He always said the same thing. Every time he talked about this, he said, there's been allegations. It is alleged. Allegedly. He had the disclaimer. These are just allegations, right? And that he would say all of this about Brett Favre. And he said that this is what the state of Mississippi is alleging, right? So I can't understand. I think he's gonna win, right? And then when I watched all that, I was so excited. I'm like, damn it, he's right. I don't know about I don't need a lawyer because unless he understands jurisdiction, right? You should probably get a lawyer. The funny part is that I think if there is a good defamation case, get this, the lawyer for Brett Favre said, McAfee didn't read the motion. He didn't read, the lawsuit, and he doesn't understand, and he didn't read any of this.
I mean, it's obvious when you listen to Pat McAfee, he never read any of the complaints. He didn't read the motion to dismiss. He just decided to get on the show and try to get as much attention as he could.
I think that might be a better defamation case because the lawyer for Brett Favre is making factual assertions. And if McAfee did read the paperwork, then it was a lie, right? And that I think he's got the better case. Anyway, all right. So now, okay. Remember, I've said it on other episodes, to win a lawsuit, you need two things, okay? You need to prove liability, and then you can have damages. You do need both of those, all right? Now, liability in terms of defamation case, when you sue the media, there was a landmark United States Supreme Court decision. It was New York Times versus Sullivan. And the way this works, New York Times was actually the defendant, but sometimes if the defendant loses in the trial courts and then they're the ones that appeal, it's like the Supreme Court then switches it because they don't have the first party is not always the plaintiff. It's the appellant, so whoever appealed. So sometimes the defendant is the first party. Anyway, okay, so in this case, Mr. Sullivan was an official in Alabama in the early 60s, and there was some sort of student protest and things like that, and whatever the government in Alabama, they treated the student protesters a certain way. It was like a civil rights protest and blah blah blah, and then the New York Times wrote about it. and the New York Times had some facts wrong, okay? So then Mr. Sullivan sued the New York Times. And this ended up going to the Supreme Court because initially Mr. Sullivan had some success against the New York Times, but when it got to the Supreme Court, the New York Times ended up winning. And the Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment allows the media to, if they're talking about some sort of like a public figure, he was a government official. Later decisions also then said, if it's a like public official, if it's a public figure, if it's somebody, like that, that the only way you can get defamation is if they're intentionally lying or they acted like with like a complete disregard, like a reckless disregard. So that is a very, very high standard, right? And that is, you have to prove both of those to win to get liability and defamation. I do not see that Brett Favre will beat McAfee, on that level, because McAfee said these are all allegations, and he was right. They were allegations. I mean, the state of Mississippi sued Brett Favre, right? So, gosh darn it, he was right. I think he's going to win. Now, another thing that I did not like about the lawyer, maybe the lawyer for Donald Trump, maybe he picked up some of this kind of arrogance from Donald Trump. Maybe he picked it up, or maybe vice versa, because the lawyer also said
it's going to cost Pat McAfee millions of dollars. And if it bankrupts him, then he will have learned his lesson.
So, all right, we'll see there, but I don't like it. I don't like that lawyer. I think he's going to lose. And when he does lose, it's going to be interesting to see what he makes up for that, Okay, now comes, in case they win on liability, then they have to prove damages. The way this works here, the damages, so Brett Favre is stating that, because of these defamatory comments by McAfee, Pat McAfee, what the fudge? How do I say this guy's name? Pat McAfee. Sorry. Okay. By Pat McAfee. Okay. Because of these allegations, Brett Favre lost potential, future engagements. He lost money doing this. Like, there's going to be less companies that want to hire him, less companies that will want to endorse him. And that, he lost a lot of money because of McAfee's defamatory comments, right? To the tune of millions of dollars. Okay, that's not always going to be easy to prove because everybody was talking smack about Brett Favre around this time, right? Except for me. Thank you. I don't want to get sued. Okay, so everyone, but he has to kind of prove that this did hurt his financial ability. Okay, now I do want to then talk about Shannon Sharpe. Okay. Shannon Sharpe was a lot more aggressive about what he said.
You made $100+ million in the NFL. So if that a poor state, Brett Favre is taken from the underserved.
Brett Favre stole money from people that really needed that money. Okay. Oh, wow. Shannon Sharpe. Okay. His comments were a lot kind of potentially defamatory. Let me explain why. He didn't say the magic words. And I think it is a magic word when McAfee kept saying, these are just allegations. These are just allegations. And McAfee was right. Brett Favre concluded, that, Shannon Sharpe concluded that Brett Favre stole money, right? So I think he's going to be, a better case of liability. Now, this is after the jurisdiction is all sorted out, right? And then Shannon Sharpe is a Georgia resident. Okay. So I think that his is going to be higher, but I go back to the Supreme Court case. Okay. New York Times versus Sullivan. And in that New York case, you have to prove to get the media, if they're talking about a public official or a public figure, you have to prove that the media, and Shannon Sharpe is media, you have to prove that he intentionally lied. And I'm clear that he did not intentionally lie. Okay. Then, this one is an or, it's not and. This is an or. You have to prove he intentionally lied, or you have to prove that he acted with a reckless disregard for the truth. Okay. I think, and by the way, Brett Favre would have to first convince a judge that he should win. Then he would have to convince a jury, okay? Because Shannon Sharpe could file what's called a motion to dismiss, and then so that the judge decides, and then if that loses, then he has to go to the jury. So Brett Favre has to convince a judge that Shannon Sharpe was like acting with reckless disregard, and if he does, then Brett Favre has to convince a jury that Shannon Sharpe acted with reckless disregard. I don't think what Shannon Sharpe rises to that level because, it was a lawsuit that was filed by the state of Mississippi, right? And so I think what Shannon Sharpe did was he just kind of went on those allegations and went on that lawsuit and drew a conclusion. I don't think a judge would say that that's enough to show a reckless disregard. If Shannon Sharpe went off the edge and kept saying things like, and I bet he stole when he was, from the Packers, and I bet, he beats up his girlfriend, like if he just goes on a like crazy tangent and says things like that, I think then that would be a reckless disregard for the truth, right? But I don't think it goes to that level. So gosh darn it, Brett Favre, you're not going to win these lawsuits, okay? You're not going to win. My prediction is that in the distant future, there'll be some sort of settlement, and that settlement will be that they give Brett Favre's, I don't know, tickets to a bowling tournament, something like that. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it, all right? I hope Brett Favre doesn't sue me, though. Fudge him, dude. Sue me too, all right?